Following the new report from the Pentagon that ISIS is resurging in Syria, there are new questions about what the United States will do about a massive refugee camp in the northeast of that country, of Syria, where ISIS is now taking root. It is home to some 70,000 people in that refugee camp. That's about the population of Wilmington, Delaware. And now the Pentagon watchdog says members of ISIS are inside the camp trying to recruit, trying to radicalize these civilians who have been caught in an endless war. Here's how Washington Post columnist Josh Rogin put it in a piece about it. The Islamic State is recruiting from the camp, smuggling fighters in and out and using it to plan attacks in other parts of Syria, officials told me. If it's not already effectively Caliphate 2.0, it soon will be. So what now? Joining me now is Mouaz Moustafa. He's executive director of the Syrian Emergency Task Force. It's an NGO that helps fund humanitarian efforts for refugees in Syria. Mouaz, thank you so much for being here. This refugee camp we're talking about is something you've been worried about for a long time, for quite a while. What are you hearing from there?
Sure. So this refugee camp, encompasses a lot of the people that were under the control of ISIS in that final push by the coalition to defeat the physical caliphate. But since the inception of the camp, this camp is well over capacity in terms of how many people it's hosting. And it's only guarded by a few dozen Kurdish SDF fighters that are providing at best minimal security. And the rest of the population is essentially in limbo. You've got about 10,000 multinationals. These are people that are not Syrian or Iraqi that came and joined ISIS. Most of the camp is women and children. The vast majority of the camp are children under 12 years old. But you've got the individuals that are the ISIS women that have come and joined that are really abusing the rest of the population of the camp, including the about 30,000 Syrians that are internally displaced that happen to be under ISIS control as the liberation of that area has been. And so it's a humanitarian crisis and it's a national security crisis at the same time.
You know, I spoke to the former Defense Secretary, Leon Panetta, and asked him about this. Here's what he said.
If we simply withdraw our forces and pretend that ISIS and the remnants of al-Qaeda are no longer a threat, make no mistake about it, it is an open invitation to terrorists to establish the kind of base from which they can conduct attacks against the United States. We can't let that happen again.
And so, Mouaz, it's a real threat to the United States, what's going on there, but it also means it is a real threat to the Syrian people. I mean, what is your greatest fear, what's playing out there at the moment?
Absolutely. First of all, my greatest fear is the children. 50,000 at least under the age of 12 that are very vulnerable to ISIS propaganda and are very vulnerable to radicalization if they're left there unrehabilitated. I think it's really important that we repatriate as many people as we can from that camp, and we need to pressure the Europeans as well to take back their citizens that have joined ISIS. The United States has taken back about 21 or so people, and that needs to happen. But if we continue to be unclear about the strategy in Syria, and at any point we just pull out, if the presidents decide to, that will keep our allies from being as committed to the fight, and that will allow ISIS to resurge, abusing both the Syrian people and hurting our interests as well.
And there's another crisis unfolding there, this time in Idlib, the northwest of the country. There are estimates that 3 million civilians, including, as you're talking, 1 million children there they've been there trying to escape the Assad regime. Your organization has actually been running a school, a kindergarten, and a women's center there for a few years to try to help, and it was just attacked. What are you hearing?
It is truly heartbreaking. I mean, it's been devastating, and we've been watching from here helplessly, trying to help keep people. All of our staff, our teachers, our kids are now in basements awaiting the bombardments to sort of slow down. Assad, backed by Iran, and the Russian Air Force are just slaughtering civilians. They are targeting hospitals and schools, including our school and our women's center, supported by amazing Americans across the United States. We lost a young kid named Ahmed, who's only 8 years old. Another young girl, Linda, who we're just used to seeing her pictures full of joy. We saw that joy robbed from her eyes as she was injured when she was playing with her friend. And so it's very real. These kids are just like our kids here in the United States, and there must be a call to the end of this indiscriminate shelling of civilians by Russia and the Assad regime in Idlib Province. It's truly a humanitarian atrocity that has the potential of doubling the refugees in Europe and becoming a national security issue as well.
It's not someone else's problem. It's everyone's problem. These children are children just like our children. Mouaz, thank you for your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.